All right, call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Chris?
Here.
Dave?
Here.
Richard?
Here.
Otis?
Here.
Carly?
Here.
Tor? Yancy? We have a quorum.
Okay. Do we have any modifications to the agenda? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I so move.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any modifications to the minutes from last meeting? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Yeah, it looks like we have also meeting minutes to approve from the February meeting. Do we have any modifications to those minutes?
That's too long to remember.
Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Oh, wait a second, that was on last one. Never mind. I'm looking at the wrong paper. Do you have any public comments on today's agenda?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
it's public comments for items that are not on the agenda.
Okay. Hearing none, let's move on. Do we have anything on the calendar? With no items, let's move on to public hearings. We have an application from Christine Rose for a vacation of a 20-foot wide utility easement on lot, and I don't have a number, located at 1001 Sandy Beach Road. Have any testimony on this? Okay, moving on. We have...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Remember, we redid the agenda,
Oh, yeah.
and so we're going to do the public testimony, and then the commission's going to take action on each
Okay,
item
we'll
before
take
you move
action
on.
away. Sorry about
And
that.
it's Lot NA. That's actually
Lot
the-
NA is
yeah,
actually, okay.
That's actually the...
I apologize about that. Dave,
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve Chris Norris's application for a 20-foot wide utility easement on Lot NA located at 1001 Sandy Beach Road.
A second?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
That's a vacation of the easement?
vacation of the easement. Dave,
Oh, okay, excuse me, yes.
you want to rephrase that?
Yes, application from Chris Norris for a vacation of a 20-foot wide utility easement on Lot NA located at 1001 Sandy Beach Road.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we need a roll call on that, or?
I can. Chris?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Otis?
Yes.
Carly?
Yes.
Okay, moving on. We have a review of a conditional use permit for a home occupation at 1309 Joa, parcel ID 01005-535. Do we have any public testimony? Discussion?
This might be a question for Liz. Can we put in all of our home occupational permits if they sunset in the future so that we don't have to go through this process, so that the permits don't remain with the property? Is that our prerogative to do, or can we do that in there, or is that something more appropriate to put in the revision of the code?
I think we have been doing that, haven't we, on all the recent
No, no,
ones?
some.
A lot of the recent ones, yeah. In this case, the Mr. Hom has moved and there isn't any.
Right, I understand, but I was just saying for the future, can we put on a conditional use permit that we put on a piece of property, can we put in code that it sunsets at the sale of the property to another individual.
It's already stated, actually, on the letter of determination conditional use permit, that the conditional use permit expires if Mr. Holmes sells or transfers the property.
Yes, I understand that, but can we do that on all, can we just do that as a matter of course so that we don't have to go through this process?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
what I would suggest is, since we're going through the review process, that we do it as part of the new code, as we're rewriting, but what we're considering is not having home occupations be conditional use permits, actually having a home occupation permit. And that way it doesn't run with the land, and then we can set standards on those as we will. So there's going to be a home occupation permit that people don't actually have to come before the Planning Commission to get if they meet those criteria. And if they don't meet those criteria, then they do a conditional use permit process. That's going to be the commission's discretion on whether to, sunset those or not. We could put it in there, but then you're kind of running the risk of, do we mean just home occupations or do we mean every single conditional use permit? So I think to keep it cleaner, it's the commission's discretion to do that. But we can look at it as we revise the code.
Is that going to be in some of the code we're going to discuss today?
I think it's in there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's put that off then to discussing the code change till then, and let's deal with the issue before us right now.
Okay.
So do we have a motion on this?
Yeah, I move the, okay, my motion is that this permit no longer be valid.
That we sunset this permit?
Yes. Is that what we need to do?
Revoke it.
Revoke it. Okay, thank you. Yes, I'll rephrase that. That the conditional use permit for home occupation at 1309 Joas Street be revoked.
I second.
You want to do a roll call?
Dave,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
Carly,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes. We have an application from Dieter Close for a minor subdivision located at 913 Sandy Beach Road. Do we have any public testimony? Discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Gotta make a
just
motion.
want to point out that there's two letters.
Yeah,
There you go.
we've got two letters concerning this.
Mr. Chair, I haven't had a chance to read these since I just looked at them.
I've read through one of them, I haven't had a chance to read through the other one.
Mr. Chairman, do you want these read into the record?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, wait, Joe does it.
Usually Joe, exactly. Usually Joe does it. Maybe we'll trade off. Let's see. The first letter is from Don Koenigs and Gloria Omer Koenigs. Dear Ms. Cabrera, review of the proposed subdivision raises several questions that perhaps will affect the future sale of these properties. The issues of concern relate to matters of road and sewer, water and electrical utility access, encroachment of structures or buildings set back from property lines in accordance with Borough Building Code. Would suggest that the applicant provide satisfactory answers to these issues prior to approving the subdivision by the Planning Commission. An example, what will be done to modify the carport set back from the proposed property line? Recommend that the proposed drawing be presented that shows how the properties can stand alone and clear title can be conveyed without encumbrances. Sincerely, Don and Gloria Koenigs.
Dave, it's for you. Concerning public hearing for the closed subdivision application, we have several comments regarding the application for deed of close for a minor subdivision at 913 Sandy Beach Road. If approved, the subdivision will result in 2 small lots, which will not have 80 feet of lot frontage. Our concern is that someday a future owner could decide to build a much larger house than neighbor has, which, due to the narrowness of the lots, will impact our property more than a structure would on a typically sized lot. Another concern is that with the accreted beach area, someone could build out onto the beach, which would have significant negative impacts upon other homes in the area, especially with the odd angle of the side lots with the beach. For instance, our east corner lot is located in front of Pam Duval's picture window. If we built out onto the beach, we would block her view of the sound. We purposely aligned our house with the corners of the Duval and the close houses so that we would not impact our neighbors. Beaver has assured us that he does not intend to build in the accreted area and that for his 2 lots he plans to incorporate a covenant which will prevent this occurring. Since a future landowner may decide they want to build in that area. We hope the Commission concurs with the need for this covenant and assures that it is incorporated. We think it is pertinent that the Commission be aware of our plans to build a garage in the northwest corner of our lot. Brad spoke with the Community Economic Development Office several months ago, informing them of this plan. Our intent is that once we complete our house construction, we will follow up with the necessary application for variance on our side yard setbacks for the front and side. Our application will provide full details, but the variance is needed due to the unusual shape of our lot and the steep gradient from our rock field down to the beach. Please see the enclosed sketch for the location of the proposed garage. How will the borough deal with the number of households with a 913 address? Currently, the 3 close households are listed as 913 Beach Road, and ours is 913B. There is potential for confusion for the fire department and the EMTs during an emergency if there are 4 households with a 913 address. Perhaps ours could be 915A, which once was part of the same Grogan subdivision as Duval's. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the subdivision proposal. Brad Hunter and Sharon Hunter.
Thank you.
Discussion?
One comment on the Hunter's letter.
Mr. Chairman.
Come up to the podium.
I'm Peter Close. One comment on the Hunter's letter. They state an 80-foot road, 80 linear feet of road on any property, and that's for rectangular lots. When there are, and it's in the city code or ordinances, if it's a trapezoidal lot, that 80 feet turns to 60 feet. So I meet all the criteria as far as that goes, and the buildable area, et cetera, et cetera. That's all I can think of right now. Unless there are other conditions that need to be addressed. Ask me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, could I ask your question? The Hunters, and I don't quite understand what they are asking for, but a covenant to prevent somebody from building in a certain area of the lot, is that something you would agree with, or?
Actually, that's something I presented myself.
Right, okay.
And I mentioned that to Brad, that I'm going to covenant both of the structures on my current property, that nobody can build within, my property is at the limit, or the little house is at the most limit, and the one that I have for sale, I will covenant that they can't build more than 6 feet out, which would be flush with my property. And talking to Rick Brown about that, he said it's important to enter it into the deed and that it would be carried over to all new buyers, heirs, and assigns, that it be cast in stone.
And then would that also cover the concern about building out into the original, out past the meander line then?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I have no desire to mess anybody else's property views up. I try to keep my places real humble. I'm not clear cut them.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I went out and took a look, and I didn't have the benefit of the hunter's comments, but I mean, it seemed like it was all doable. What about the question from the Keenings then? That was the only question I had. How are you going to do the carport? Are you just going to tear it down?
It's down. Yesterday I took it down.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Yeah. And
Okay.
but Liz was going to have me sign a thing that says it will go down.
Right.
And I've taken it down, and I mentioned it to Joe Bertignoli this morning.
Okay, yeah, because when I went out and took a look at it, it was still in one piece. Okay.
Yeah, I have photographs.
Okay, yeah, no, I trust you. I just was just curious on how that was going to work. Okay.
And regarding their future desire for a variance, I'm not sure how that ties into this for their garage, or if it does.
Not, my understanding is it wouldn't tie into your permit. Right. Or your, yeah, that's all I have. Thanks. And then could I ask another question about the address? And that seems a relatively straightforward thing to do, isn't it? Or is it?
Liz?
I'll have to take a look at that. Unfortunately, at times, they didn't plan for additional lots, and so they didn't allow extra numbers in between the addressing. And so we'll have to take a look and see, that might be fine just to change them, the Hunters over to 915A, if they're okay with that. And that way we won't have so many 913s. We try to avoid those duplicate numbers with the letter designation because it makes it sound like it's an apartment building or something, and just for clarity's sake, exactly for the fire department and EMS. But that's not difficult for us to do. It's just often the property owner just has to contact if they have a mortgage or utility or anything like that and let them know that there's a different legal address on there.
I would recommend adding language concerning the covenant and into the determination.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
you might, before you close the public hearing, I don't know, the Hunters just got here, I don't know if they have anything to say, and then you would need to make a motion to start your deliberations.
Do you have any testimony?
Depends on what we had in the letter, unless you have something else you wanted to add.
Joe did a very nice job of reading it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Want to make you aware of some things.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve Peter's Close application for a subdivision at 913 Sandy Beach Road.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Discussion? I would recommend we add language about the covenant.
I agree.
Does anybody else have anything to add?
I think some of the points that staff made in there should be also applied.
Which lines are you thinking of?
I guess you really don't have to add an end to this. It's all pretty much what it'll have to do.
Yeah. Everything, all that's pretty much covered by code.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the only thing would be to address the hunter's concern.
I was looking at the stuff over on the next page here, these 3 items.
Okay,
I'm gonna add into
great.
that.
Well, we could probably eliminate that the carport be dismantled since it's already been dismantled.
I think it needs to be in there though, still, whether regardless of whether it's been dismantled or not. It just,
Okay.
you know. Any other comments?
What's the motion?
Haven't made one yet.
I made a motion to accept.
I made the motion to accept, but we
We need
were
to
going to amend it.
Yeah.
I move to amend it to add the covenant requirement.
I second.
Roll call vote?
Oh, hold on a second.
No, we got to vote on the original motion. We have to, no, first we have to vote on the original motion, then we have to vote on the...
Well, hold, please. Before you vote,
Well,
so
I
a
just-
covenant needs to say, because all you just said was that it needs to be a covenant, but you didn't say what the covenant
Yeah.
needs to address.
If it's okay, Richard, I'll amend my motion that we have the minor subdivision located at 913 Sandy Beach Road with a covenant. Okay, now I need help with the wording.
Then no building will occur in the accredited area.
Okay, no building will occur within the accredited area or 6 feet from the meander line. Is that what you guys had in mind?
Or do you have better language, Liz, to suggest?
No, I'm just going to ask the 6 feet landward, not within 6 feet of the
6 feet
meander.
landward
Of the meander line, right?
Okay.
Is that, yeah.
Question, would that be up to me to, I guess, draw up the covenant and then submit it to the city, or where is that, who's,
Yes.
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. And then my understanding is that covenant would it'd be listed in the deed, right? Right.
When it gets recorded.
And is that the correct wording? 6 feet from the
6 feet.
From the meander line?
Of the meander line.
Yes, the older structure is currently 6 feet behind the little structure.
Right.
And so that's what the older place, I'm going to covenant that they can't build more than 6 feet forward.
Oh, okay, that's different.
Both my places would be no more further, and my place would not build any further. Except, my thought was, I don't have a bulkhead, a stone bulkhead, and thought I should allow a buyer to put a bulkhead there, but also limit that to 12 feet from the existing house. So no deck or landscaping go out into the high flat per se.
Yes.
Rather,
Can you please come to
I'm
that?
sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, the covenant, as I intend to line it out, is that the house I'm selling, that's on the market, do not build more than 6 feet of any structure towards the beach from the existing building, and to have no bulkhead or decks beyond 12 feet from the existing structure, which is approximately where that fill is right now. I have a soft stone and log bulkhead. And the small place that's not for sale, that won't be built any further forward, covenanted. And same thing, I could go 12 feet, rather. No, it would be more like 6 feet from my existing, for a bulkhead, for groundwork.
I understand that. My concern is that, 100 years from now, the original structure might not be there, so it might be hard to figure out exactly where 6 feet is from that structure from that point in time. It'd be better if you had a hard reference
To that meander.
to the meander line or something of that nature. And
That sounds totally
I mean,
Proper, yeah, use the meander line rather than the structure.
right, because, 100 years from now, there might be two structures that have
Yep.
gone there and gone and wet.
And the meander line might change.
Well, that's the other problem, too.
So maybe if we referred to the existing as-built and use that in 100 years from now, or,
Well, the meander line's based off off of a survey, so that should be able to be located.
but, right, but it's changed. Like,
Yeah, it will
it's
change.
just changed by, I don't know,
Right.
20 feet or so. But I'm open to either reference point for the setbacks.
I'd have to ask Joe or Liz on that one.
Would we, if we reference the original BLM meander line, would that be,
No, I don't think they keep those.
Well, no, because we're moving the meander line based on this new survey, so we won't be using the original BLM line. So we're creating a new one as part of the survey, unless you want someone to have to go back to the original,
okay, so...
original surveys, Trying to pull the...
It looks like we have two survey points, though, that we could be able to reference.
Yeah, you can reference property lines on this existing survey that you're going, this plat that you're going to approve.
Is there, at least on this map that I have, it shows that there's a monument, is that correct? It's right on the fill of the pad. I mean, we could do a straight line from there to the other survey point and say, I don't know if that works or not. I'm just trying to get something that is going to work long-term, accomplish what you guys are trying to accomplish.
I'm open to whatever you suggest.
I was thinking if there was a way we could reference these 2 points,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
here and here,
Right.
and say anything behind that line.
Yeah, that'd
6
be
feet
easier.
Behind that line, because that basically follows the original BLM meander line, but the wording would have to be such to reference those 2 monuments that exist.
Considering that the new meander line looks to be approximately parallel with the existing structures, approximately, that might be a simple way for measuring back, but of course the surveyor could do anything.
I think the issue, though, is the fact that it's hard to measure from the meander line out front, because there's no monuments in that. But there are monuments at those 2 points, and that we could measure back off of those monuments would make it easiest. So I think that's probably, in my opinion, that'd be the best way to reference it, but...
As far as permanence, also, the permanence of a monument, the foundations are concrete on bedrock. That might be an appropriate reference to. And I guess for my purposes, say in selling the house, to have a covenant that says you may not build 6 feet further than the existing house. Of course, that's in the next, say, 20 years.
But then if somebody builds another house, then that wording is, it's not a point that's permanent.
Understood.
So,
For the
These two
monuments.
permanent?
yeah, there's monuments here. I was thinking these 2 monuments there's monuments at those 2 locations, which gives us a point of reference that's pretty close to where we want to,
Monuments don't necessarily stay there, though.
Yeah.
They get run over, they get stolen.
yeah.
But you can always determine where they're at by resurveying.
Right,
Yeah, I mean, that-
relocate them.
Yeah.
These would easily be able to relocate with the survey.
Mr. Chairman, you could,
Yes.
you could include with the covenant, see Exhibit A, and actually draw on the plat, the area that you're talking about. And if they're recorded together, one document referencing the other, then that gives you,
Okay.
Can we do and/or?
Excuse me?
Can we do and/or, like 6 feet from the existing concrete foundation, or from survey point, the one survey point to the other survey point, no more than 6 feet within that line, or 6 feet from the concrete foundation?
Yeah, and then I would say, as shown in Exhibit A, so
Okay.
that someone can understand what the heck you're talking about in a
Right.
picture. Yeah. So,
The surveyor, Rick Braun, told me that, I asked him, could you put that covenant onto the new as-built plan or plat, whatever, the plat? And he said, no problem, but that it is important to go on the deed.
Right,
I understand it being filed with the city too.
right. So then so the amendment of the motion would be that, sorry. All right, we're still on the First Amendment?
One amendment. We're not doing more than one.
Okay, yeah, one amendment.
Make this amendment, the amendment you're making.
Okay, the amendment would be that between, I don't know, what we want to call it. We're going to do a photo, we're going to attach the plat to this. Is that, or a plat, attach this map?
you're going to attach the plat to the covenant.
Right, okay, so can we name the 2 points?
Can you just call it the meander line
Yeah.
on this,
Well, yeah,
shown
okay.
on this one?
Right. So, okay, the 2 points defined by the original BML meander line, no more than 6 feet landward of that line, or 6 feet in front of the existing concrete foundation.
So just make sure, so you're saying no further seaward than 6 feet landward of the meander line.
Right, yeah, one landward, one
Well, that's
seaward.
really clear.
Simple instead
Yeah,
of
yeah.
adding the
Okay.
foundation part in there.
Okay, well, let's just make it, then maybe we should just make it, is it clearer just to do 6 feet, okay. I'll start over again, sorry. Karen, do you want to hit me? Okay. Okay. 6 feet lander of the survey points defined by the original BML meander line. And I would defer to Rick Braun if there's an issue with that he contacts us or fixes it.
And just to confuse it, so Dieter had made a difference between a structure and a bulkhead or deck. So is there any differentiation there? Are you talking just structures? Are you talking everything? I'm asking you.
I would say we say nothing beyond that point. If he wants to make it more restrictive, he can.
Okay.
So,
Excuse me, for what it's worth, the structure, any addition to the structure is what would impede the neighbor's views, whereas a bulkhead, say like Glow's bulkhead next door to me, that goes out a fair ways, but it doesn't really, it changes the nature of the beach, but not of the view in general. But I personally, selling the place next door, would prefer that new owner not build any bulkhead further than 12 feet, just to keep the beach pristine. But that could be up to me, as long as the board's satisfied with setback of building structure. It sounds like I might have to have you write that up.
Well, if we just do it 6 feet, you just can't do anything 6 feet from the meander line or between those 2 points. That includes everything, unless they come and get like a conditional use permit or something like that. Right or wrong?
one, if the covenants, if
What's a covenant, we don't,
can't.
we're not,
we can't change it.
we
Okay.
can't do anything with that, yeah. So that would become a civil matter if someone violated the covenant and then the neighbors objected, that would become a civil matter. We don't enforce the covenants on private property. So, of course, if you wanted to do it as part of the approval of the plat, then it becomes a borough enforcement thing. But as a covenant, it's a civil thing, yeah. A civil thing is fine.
Yeah, I understand. So I guess my question to you is, if we do this with that motion that I just outlined, that's basically going to mean you can't do anything within 6 feet of the meander line.
Including a bulkhead?
Well, it pretty much includes everything the way we have it structured right now. The building, bulkhead, unless you want us to
Well, if you're saying that the original meander line's approximately like 12 feet?
No, I didn't measure to the meander line at all, and it looks like significantly more than 11 feet. I want to prevent, I want to allow those people to put a bulkhead in, but no more than 12 feet from the existing building. Some people just don't like a soft beach.
Well, if we say nothing beyond 6 feet, okay, you can make it more restrictive than that in how you write it.
As far as the bulkhead goes.
As far as whatever.
Without the city being involved, as long as the building stays with no more than 6 feet.
We say nothing can be 6 feet from landward of that meander line.
Okay.
Okay? You can make whatever restrictions you want as long as it meets that requirement.
For example, you could put the covenant, nothing within 3 feet of it, or 9 feet, or whatever.
Yeah,
You can change it.
Or you can say no bulkhead within 6 feet of the meander line, and no structure within, you can get a tape measure out and say it's 20 feet. So no structure within 20 feet of that meander line. You can do that. We're just saying that there has to be something that's within 6 feet of that meander line, nothing's going to be built.
I'm confused on that. You're saying I can do a 12-foot on
You can-
the bulkhead and a 6-foot on the structure?
Well, you're going from the structure, we're going from the meander line, because that's an easy reference point.
Right.
So we're saying 6 feet, so you could say, the bulkhead can be no closer than 6 feet landward of the meander line, to the water. You can say the structure can be no closer than, say, 20 feet if you want it to.
Got it.
So, that's your requirement.
Okay. I'm willing to structure it that way. And that 6-foot, 12-foot that's my ideal. Initially, I thought having a covenant where there's no development allowed, but it just seems like it's not going to infringe those people, or rather give them the opportunity to go forward, and it won't affect me or Hunters, I believe, the old house if it goes forward, nor Glow. But it is important to me that they, however it's written, that they can go 12 feet from the house or whatever distance from the meander line with a bulkhead. But definitely not 12 feet with the house. That would start infringing on neighbor views.
Yeah.
So I didn't go on your property and go down to the beach, so I'm in the dark here. So right now, the meander line to the house is how far?
I don't have that measurement. I would guess it looks, and it's at an angle to the house. The original meander line is at quite an angle to the house.
Close this is.
It's at least 20 feet.
Yeah.
It seemed to me most logical to go from the existing concrete foundation. And that is on bedrock for what it's worth, but I understand going from corner markers, monuments, which can be reestablished as well. I think somebody would have a hard time pulling out my concrete foundation if they wanted to build. Your call.
Well, I'm going to ask Joe and his vast experience.
Yes? What are you going to ask me?
Well, I mean, okay, is going off of an existing structure, does that work? Or should you go off of an actual?
You've walked the beaches around here and you've seen concrete foundations and piling foundations that have been abandoned for 50, 60 years.
Right.
There's still some concrete on the beach. I don't think that concrete's going away.
Right, no, I agree.
What my concern would be is if somebody poured another concrete foundation over the existing concrete foundation,
or jackhammered the whole thing out. I mean, if it just,
because then you lose that point of reference, whereas the property lines are set in a plat.
Unless we reference a specific subdivision.
yeah. The problem with trying to take some measurements off the meander line is it's crooked. Like Dieter said, how do you get a parallel point on when the two lines of the existing house and the meander line aren't parallel? I mean, the one's, if you went out 6 foot, you'd be a long ways away on one side and closer on the other.
Well, the idea would be that you wouldn't be going after the meander line, you'd be going after the point between the two monuments, a straight line, and
On a
then,
straight line.
I know.
It's not parallel to the buildings at all.
right.
It's close, but not. And for what it's worth, the foundation has a big 2004 printed it, or written it. And a lot of rebar.
Are the houses parallel to the property line on the roadside?
Approximately.
They look closer than the meander line.
Yeah, closer than the meander line, but, and closer than if we take the two existing monuments that are in place.
I think it's probably going to be the closest, though, of what we're going to be able to easily define in something that's going to be able to be looked back up in the future, would be to generally follow those 2 points that are at either end of that original BLM meander line. And unless you wanted to have a line defined by Rick in the survey that is a specific, this is the line.
That's what I want from Rick.
So,
That's a question I have, is when Rick surveys this property, can you establish a line that would be on the property, that would be like an easement or a,
No build,
what?
like a no-build line.
yeah.
Like a no-build line, establish it right on the plat, so that's it, that's your lines. I mean, would that be
And
acceptable?
we can state
Yeah.
at this point that you must establish a line, and it can be no closer to the water than 6 feet behind the original BLM meander line, as stated on the plat that you've provided us.
Yeah.
But you can set it wherever you want closer to the buildings than that. And
Right now, he could establish that line, couldn't he, Chris, with using the buildings as reference? Because once he established these, if those buildings go away, those marks will always be there.
Okay.
That's, I think that would solve a lot of things. You'd get them 6 feet and 12 feet, whatever you're going to do, those lines, what Rick will establish. The house, it's established with what your distances to the houses are now, and then it's on the plat, on the survey that's going to get approved. And if those houses ever go away, those lines will always still be there. Those marks,
Yeah.
those reference points will always be there.
So you'd have an actual surveyed mark. I mean, that seems like that solves the problem to me.
Yeah,
solves-
if
that solves a
if
lot
we
of
did,
crooked
if we
line.
did that and specify that there are monuments put on the 3 property lines to indicate
Yeah.
where that line is, so it's easy to relocate.
Monuments on which 3 properties?
On the ones on each side of the lots. So you've got one in the middle, and then one on each side.
Rick would be establishing your no-build lines. It'd be like an easement, but it's a no-build line.
Yeah.
Like a,
Could
that be done?
Joe's methods of addressing this make the most sense.
I mean, it's gonna mean Rick's gonna have to establish a few more points, probably gonna charge you for it. But it would solve a lot of problems. You get your covenant, everybody's assured down the future that there's never anything gonna be forward to that.
And
I think that would solve
If we were to
things.
go, yeah, I mean, we could would like Rick to draw specifically for any buyer and any future heirs or whatever, that's as far as you can build, dashed line.
And then you can go state from that line, 6 feet in front of that
For a
is the
bulk.
maximum distance for the bulkhead.
Correct.
Okay, sounds good.
So my question is, what do we have to do now? Should I amend my,
Just start over on
I'll start over.
the fresh
I'm
amendment.
not sure we had a second on the last one.
Yeah, we did in a second, so since we didn't have a second, we can, I can start all over. Okay, so my amendment will be that we will go from the survey points that Rick Braun establishes as a no-build line from the existing property.
Could you reference a surveyor instead of specifically?
A surveyor, okay. Yes, excuse me,
Just for the record,
just for the record, okay.
that a surveyor.
That a surveyor will establish the no-build line from the existing structure,
How far from the existing structure?
right? Yes, sorry.
It's for Rick to actually put monuments rather than a line on the as-built, which of course we can measure from the concrete. But for him to try to put monuments in at that 6-foot spot, the logs there are it's such a mess. There won't be a decent monument right there.
I don't think he has to put a monument, he just has to establish a survey point.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all you need to do.
You would establish a point from the monuments that
Yeah.
Swing
exist.
ties.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's just going to establish a point because he knows what that land or things will look like in the future, and then, but as long as those points are done and the earth still goes in the same direction it does, everything will be okay.
I think that works. They said he would establish a point, or
Okay.
a distance, an as-built distance from that monument to your new line. And then so in the future, you can find that monument, measure back, and they'd have the line.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking, if somebody were to add 6 feet out, it may not meet the 10-foot setback requirement on the side yard, in which case I would have Rick pull it away from that corner so that that 6-foot max doesn't encroach on the 10-foot setback.
Well, we'd catch that when
That would
they
have
came for
to
a
go
building
through a
permit.
variance.
You can establish straight, they would get caught on the site plan for an addition.
I think it'll be easier for him to just set the line on an existing property line and then go across, and then we'll figure out the 10-foot
Yeah.
if someone wants to do something. Yeah, yeah.
Somebody's got to second this motion.
Can you just succinctly restate that?
I'd like to, but I'm so confused now. I don't think I possibly can. Oh, not really, but go ahead.
The approve is amended to include the covenant that outlines the area that will be designated as a no-build area be established by the surveyor on the plat.
Boy, sounds good.
Except it doesn't say where.
Yeah.
Doesn't say what?
Doesn't say where on the,
It'd be like no closer than 6 feet from the BLM meander line, right?
No,
Yeah.
no closer than 6 feet from the existing structure.
Yeah.
Did you guys back off on the meander line as the, okay.
We can go with,
Which would be no what?
So then we're back to the discussion again of structure versus bulkhead, if you do the 6 feet from the existing structure. Well, they already have a second on the original motion, so,
well, we could say 12 feet from the existing structure, that there'd be no build. He can make it more restrictive.
okay, that makes more
Let's
sense.
do that.
What?
Someone has to restate that, yeah, clearly.
Include the covenant that outlines the area that will be designated as a no-build area be established by the surveyor on the plat, which would be no closer.
Closer to the water than 12 feet from the existing structures.
No, you guys wanted 6 feet, right?
Well, it's,
I do not want anybody to build a building.
you can specify that. We're saying that 12 feet. So that gives you the space for the bulkhead at 12 feet. You can say no structures closer than 6 feet. You can make it more restrictive.
Understood. Oh,
So-
that makes sense, very clear for the city.
Yeah.
And then my covenant to the future buyers,
Right.
heirs, they can't build 6 feet, and the city has the 12-foot bulkhead.
Right.
Somebody has to second it.
A second.
Roll call. Or do we need to vote on the first one
So you
first?
gotta vote on the amendment first.
Okay, vote on the amendment.
Carly?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Otis?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Now the motion to approve.
And just to clarify, your motion to approve includes all the recommendations, 1, 2, 3, and then 4 is the covenant?
Right. I make a motion. On exactly what was said.
A second.
All right. Dave?
Yes.
Carly?
Yes.
Otis?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes. Okay, we have an application from James Whitethorn for a minor subdivision located at 101 Mill Road. Get to that particular one here. Do we have any public testimony? We have no letters of comment. Liz is shaking her head.
Oh, actually, Mr. Chairman, the only comment which is in the staff report, which is the creation of a utility easement if they're going to run a water line from the highway through, is it lot?
Lot 3B for the benefit of Lot 3C?
Right.
Yeah, I'm just reading it here in your report.
Yeah. So I guess that would be a question for the property owners, how they would feel about that.
My name is James Whitethorn, and the only comment on that is I think that could be done in the future if so needed. I don't think we need to address that at this time. If someone builds up above and is interested in hooking into my sewer and water, so I put extra big piping in and extra water line size in case my son builds, he'll be building right next to it on the other part of the subdivision. My son and I are gonna own the whole thing, but if he does that, then, or someone up above decides to do that, I think we can do that at a later time instead of adding it to my subdivision plat now.
What does the city say about that? I know they got into some things at No See 'em Street along that line.
Well, I wasn't appropriated with a line off of the water main or sewer main for my lot. Apparently, it was thought to be done in Mill Road if at some date they decided to put sewer and water, but that's a private road owned by Pete Lipstein. So there's no, I had no access to water and sewer. So I had to go went into my son's sewer. We kind of redid his sewer too because it wasn't done properly back in the past, whoever put it together. So we redid that, re-insulated his water line. I didn't want to connect into his water line because it was only a 3/4 outlet. So we, with the help of the city, put in a 1-inch main right into the main water line and run that in there to stay off of his water. So we'd have our individual shutoffs just a few feet from his on right next door. So. But the sewer is a 6-inch main that was running, and that runs under the road to the other side of the highway. So we were allowed to tie into the 6-inch, and I run 6-inch all the way up 150 feet up to my structure where I'm going to build. So it would accommodate 4 or 5 lots up above if needed someday, but I don't think we need to jumble up the thing with the utility easement unless needed. That can always be done.
The main reason for the one going across your lot would be to service Luke's lot.
That's the main reason, yeah.
We're not even referring to going up further in the subdivision.
No, but it could possibly happen, but we're not. Actually, we're not. Maybe not even using mine to go up to his, because he could use his own if he wishes. He has it already up there too.
But if that lot were sold, whoever the future owner of 3C is, you know, if for some reason you ended up selling 3C to somebody else, then normally that lot would be required to connect, but because once it's subdivided, it's right on the line of that 150 feet, they may not have to. But if they have that easement, then they kind of have access, you know, they're going to have to connect, right? Or they'll have access right there.
In the future, it's my son's lot, and he plans on a future warehouse, so he could either go in mine or his. They're both going to go into his anyway, because they're tied together at the base. So. But I just didn't want to jumble up and start changing my survey work that's been done. I'd just like to leave it the way it is.
Because he'd have to go back in
If it
and...
wasn't included, I want to just leave it the way it was drawn.
I just had one other question. Did they already run the water line?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
How big is the water line, Jim?
1 inch.
The water and sewer is already run. Is it going up to the property line with the 3C, or?
You mean the subdivision
Yeah.
section, the next
Yeah.
where the line is?
Right. Is the,
No, it's within, it's within 30 feet. It
Within
runs up-
30 feet?
Runs up to my building.
okay.
But at a future date, it may be, be done. I don't know if it was approved by the city or not, for some of the lots up there, but it would hold.
You are loud, Jim, but not that loud.
I can raise my voice. Yeah, I'm just saying, if the sewer and water could accommodate more units. And I definitely just did it for my son's purpose of making it easier for him to use it for his warehouse. He desires to do it.
Hey, Jim, the question I got is, you already stated that the service to Luke's lot is only 3/4.
Yes.
If he has intentions of using this lot for anything but a warehouse, other than a dry warehouse,
Right.
is 3/4 is going to be probably inadequate to service 2 structures, so he's going to have to get to that 1-inch line of yours. Which means
or
legal,
another one.
or put in another one, which would still mean, or another one that goes all the way down to the main,
His
correct.
property all the way up, yeah.
But he couldn't build anything and legally tie into yours, even though you're related, without an easement, is one, at all. So,
If he desires to have water,
correct. Just so that's,
he doesn't need water, so.
and
No one has it up that road, I don't think, do they? Well, 1 or 2 people have it, that's it, all the way up that mill road.
yeah, it was a special use permit that got them water up there. But just so you know that they couldn't, when he comes to build, needs a permit, he's gonna have water and sewer issues, because he's within the distance, am I correct?
Well, on one side, it's 123, on the other side, it's 154. So the distance from the main.
Would he be required if that lot were developed by anybody in the future, whether it's,
And that's what we were just discussing.
That's what we're just discussing, is if you notice that on one side, it's 123 feet from, the main, more
Yeah.
or less, and then on the other side, it's 154. So if you're within 150 feet, you're required to connect, so 150 feet from your property line. So on
so
one
they would
side
be
they are,
required?
and one side they're not.
Connect.
I don't, one side they are, one side they're not.
But in the future, if it were to sell,
That's what I'm saying, on one side they are, on one side they're not.
okay.
Because if it's 150 feet from your property line, if they were going down Mill Road, I think so.
That's if they desire to have water in the warehouse, right?
Right, if there was a desire, right, to connect.
If he desires to have water, then we'll file a utility easement to allow him to do that. I'd have no problem with that, but I just don't want to progress slowly before we start receiving things for taxes. We want to start paying our taxes right away for his
Of course,
property.
yeah.
Can't carry it on too long.
I totally understand.
So do we have any more testimony?
Warehouse, industrial lot.
Do we have a motion?
So my understanding is we're going to make a motion with only, without the final plat establishing a private utility easement along existing water sewer line across Lot 3B for the benefit of Lot 3C. We're going to strike that at this time.
Make your motion, yeah.
That's kind of what we've been talking about. Okay, I just want to make sure before I start doing one of these weird motions again. Okay, that we approve the minor subdivision located at 101 Mill Road, and the planning commission makes the following determination, that the Whitethorn subdivision meets requirements of minor subdivision and proposed plat is approved with the following condition. 1, a final Mylar plat created by a surveyor licensed in the state of Alaska and consistent with borough plat submission standards is submitted for signature and recording. That's it.
I second.
Richard,
Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
Carly,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Flush away. Thanks to the Whitethorns.
So you want for the caretaker dwelling.
Let's
You
just
just open the taps on the tax.
make sure you don't grab that. In the exact same case.
All right.
He doesn't go in, you ain't dying in it.
Non-agenda items. Any comments from fellow commissioners? Staff? Okay.
Oh, could I make one thank you to Richard? Thank you for carrying the water on our parking lot proposal. We got shot down quite dramatically.
Yeah, they have a much different opinion of how they want it than what I was originally proposing. And all of a sudden it costs 3 times as much as what it needs to.
I think it means they don't want to do it.
Just back of her sister. We've got to come over here to establish that.
Moving on to a review of the proposed zoning codes. Article 2, zoning districts and special use standards. Liz?
Yes. So, quick overview. I know there's a lot in here. Chapter 2.1 establishes and defines the different zoning districts. We have 3 new districts, which are waterfront districts, A, B, and C. The residential districts were collapsed into 4, and that's mostly noticeable in residential high district, where we are taking multifamily, mobile home park, single-family mobile home, and collapsing all of those into residential high district. So that gives developers more options on what they can do with a particular parcel and how to develop it. And really what the borough's interest would be is that, it has a higher density of residential dwellings than we would allow in other places. It also introduces a residential medium, which is the kind of the downtown core area where you have those smaller lot sizes. And so we're going to make that 5,000 square foot lot the standard lot size for that district, and then propose reducing the setback requirements in that district so that we would reduce the number of variance requests, and also acknowledge that those are really, for the most part, pretty small lots, and allow for them to be able to develop in a normal way, considering the lot size, and then have smaller setbacks for those. Residential low density is pretty much our current single-family residential, and that doesn't change significantly. It has the same lot size and the same predominantly setback requirements. I think the thing you'll see also in some of the districts is an increase in the maximum buildable area, the percentage, and that is there to accommodate accessory dwelling units and detached accessory dwelling units. So we increase that a little bit in the different districts. Rural residential pretty much stays the same, except we're really limiting development to one single family, and I think it allows for a duplex, but doesn't allow for accessory dwellings. It also allows for a manufactured or mobile home out there as well. But as long as the density is low, then it's not really specified on what kind of development occurs out there.
Could I ask one question?
Sure.
What is a gross acre versus an acre?
So when they look at density, you can look at gross acre, which is just really the outside boundary of something, right? And you're just counting all the acreage within that boundary. When they look at net acre, which is the alternate way of configuring this, and you would subtract out probably about 20% for right-of-ways and other public dedications. So you can either look at a chunk of land as a whole and say it's the gross acre, and here's kind of our density per gross, or subtract out 20% for roads and parking or whatever, and then you come up with a net, and then you have a density per net. So really it's only useful if you're doing a large subdivision, right? So that's when it kind of comes into play. Other highlights that may or may not have popped out as we go through is our exciting photo or picture of how you measure building height. Since the existing, it's on page 57, the existing definition is...
Page 57?
Page 57, yep, is confusing at best just in the text, but then
We got in a lot of trouble that
yeah,
so many years ago.
So we've added some images to help people understand how you measure building height. And so it really helps when there's a slope, which is what it's intended to do, is provide some alleviation of the standard for when people are building on a slope, which, as we know, is pretty much almost everywhere here. So,
What if it's an A-frame?
I think we would go with the gabled roof, right, Joe, or no?
Right.
Yeah.
That's where we got into trouble.
With an A-frame?
An A-frame that comes all the way down to the deck?
Well, it didn't come quite all the way down, but yeah, if it's steep enough,
You still
and
would
you're
take
going,
you still would take a point halfway between what would be sent your wall height and your ridge height.
well, the problem, I guess I haven't studied this, but the problem is that it looks like to people that it's two-story and 35 feet or something like that, and actually you can build a house like 70 feet high
You can?
to the peak on an A-frame. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Now, I don't see a picture for the A-frame, which,
We could look for one and see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd probably be good to include.
have to be,
Yeah, I can still see being really confused about measuring on an A-frame based on just these 4 images.
yes. If it's a real steep roof, it,
So even a steep roof has to come down to a wall at some point in time.
wall can be 6 feet high though,
Well, then,
or 6 inches high.
and by these standards, it would be halfway between the top of the wall and the peak.
Yes. And when
That is
somebody
saying if you
builds
had,
something
like,
that big in
25
front of their
here.
house, that they had a view,
They could go up that, yeah.
Yeah, the
We'll
old
look at
Norwegian
it.
houses.
Yeah,
We'll
we can look at it.
Yeah,
pitch
I'll see what, if
is a really
there's
good
some,
example of that. The second story is entirely usually within that.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think if we put a maximum height on it,
on an A-frame?
whatever building you got,
What about a total maximum height? No structure
yeah,
shall.
that's what I'm talking about.
And
so are you measuring from where?
That's the trick, is where you're measuring from. We thought about that too. Trust me, we've discussed this a lot. And especially when we come upon a building that is at that maximum or close to the maximum, and we're trying to figure out what the gradient is, where the gradient is, the back, you might daylight basement out the front, and then halfway up the wall, you might be ground level at the back,
That's another problem, but,
yeah. Whereas if where do you go from, you pick your grade plane, say if you're gonna go with a maximum height of 35 feet, 40 feet for residential, where do you pick your number? You use these standards for, and then just go right to the peak?
well, if you use,
It'd be easy though, if we could find a grade plane to do it, Otis, that, because that's the definitive number instead of the halfway, but seems hard to do.
I guess I'm just saying that quite a while ago, I don't know, 20 years ago, planning and zoning got a lot of really nasty letters. You have just let somebody build in front of our view, and I thought the maximum height of a building in here was 2-story, or 3, whatever it was.
It's 3 stories
And this
or
is
35 feet, yeah.
20 feet higher than what the maximum is. How come you let them do it?
Well, that's what we're hoping, that this would, pretty much define how high you can go.
Well, I guess if I was doing it, I'd like to pick a maximum, no matter what shape your roof is.
Well, it's not really the roof shape, it's more about the slope of your lot. So if there's
it's
a
both factors,
15
yeah.
15 feet difference between the front and the back, so where, are we measuring from the front, are we measuring from the back?
You could say the lowest elevation or the highest, however.
So theoretically, what you're saying though too is like a house built in the bank, like on Sandy Beach or anywhere, could be, from the ground 45 feet from the road level elevation, but yet on the backside where the slope goes up, it could be 30 feet.
Yeah.
So the maximum peak height is only 30 feet, but yet you go from the roadside and the darn thing's 45 feet from the ground. That's the trick, is picking where your
You
grade
take it
plane
at the
is.
lowest elevation.
The lowest elevation.
Well, I mean, you
That's
can
really
pick it
the limit.
anywhere, but when people look at a thing that says, if I build my upstairs story this high, I can look over any roof because they can't build any higher than this, and then it ends up 30 feet higher than they thought it was.
That does, I mean, that does present a limit to people with a slope lot. You know, you're gonna, it doesn't really take into account the slope. So,
Huge limitation on the slope plot.
you know, I mean, we could do that, but it'll limit folks that are building on something like this, you know? Because if we took the average, which is what this does, it takes the average of the slope and gives them a little bit extra to build from, you know?
Yeah, and that's all right, as long as, I guess, I look at it, the problem is that they didn't expect to have a building that high in front of their view,
And I think that,
based on what they saw in the
right.
specs.
We don't have anything in ordinance that addresses views either, so, you know, there's nothing preventing anyone from building and blocking someone else's view. I mean, there's nothing in there for that, regardless of maximum height, you know? But let us know if you want to change it, but I can just keep going through and you guys can weigh in as we go through and continue on the public hearing process and the review, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, where was I? And I'm going to circle back, but I'll just go forward to Chapter 2.3, which is special use standards. And this whole section are provisions where we're trying to reduce the number of permits that people have to apply for, and that's basically what it does. So we have standards laid out. If, for instance, you wanted to do a home occupation, if you could follow, if it's allowed in your district and you follow the special use standards, then you don't need to apply for a home occupation permit. If you're going to be outside of those standards, then you would need to come to the commission for a conditional use permit. So it basically gives people more information. You know, it's something that we more or less have done as a standing rule of thumb, but now it actually is an ordinance and saying, okay, here's the line. If you're on this side of the line, go forth and do your thing. And if you're on the other side of the line, you're going to need to come in and get a conditional use permit.
Only thing I have heartburn with outside of the entire ordinance is, is the square foot requirement. 20 by 20, 400 square feet is more than adequate for a home occupied office. I think anything more than 525, more than 400 square feet should go through some sort of review process.
So that's the standard that we have in ordinance right now, and I just kept it, but we can, you know,
Well,
as we go through.
I mean, if we're
can-
trying to simplify it, so if you want something under 400 square feet, easy. If you want something bigger, more elaborate, then you have to go through the current process, where that'd be my only recommendation. Because, I mean, if we were talking, you know, if somebody wants to put in a dentist's office, a lawyer's office, a doctor's office, accountant's office, bookkeeper's office, any of those type of things, you know, 20 by 20 square feet is definitely large enough to accommodate that, I would think.
Yeah, that's going to be up to you guys to
Yeah, I
make
mean,
make that call.
That's my feeling. And, you know, I mean, I live in a 900 square foot house, so 525 seems like my entire downstairs. So maybe that's why my outlook on this is a little skewed. I think for home occupied businesses, my problem with them is you're essentially creating commercial districts in residential districts. And then if we do home occupation permits, that they should sunset and they shouldn't go with the sale of the property. In other words, if you have put a dentist office in your house, that when it's sold to somebody else, that doesn't necessarily mean they can have a dentist office there unless they reapply for the permit.
But if it's less than 400 square feet, they don't have to apply.
That's right.
I guess the thing I see in home occupied businesses is there's going to be ones that don't fit into that kind of a situation. Say somebody who lives out the road's got a fairly decent sized piece of property, has a big garage, and they want to start up a business in their garage doing woodworking or something. Is that going to be an issue as far as the square footage, or is there going to be some sort of a different way to approach that?
Well, if you're going to have the square footage limitation, it's going to be the square footage limitation. If it goes past those standards, it's going to have to come to you guys.
Yeah. But there is a pathway, though, for somebody who, in that situation, can say, this is what I want to do, and be able to come before us and get a permit. Granted, I do agree with the idea of sunsetting them with each individual use. That way, it's not something that sticks with the property. It sticks with what that business is and that business operator.
Yeah, my thought on that was 400 square feet out the road is a lot different than 400 square feet in my neighborhood. 400 square foot where I'm at is going to be a lot more impactful to my neighbors than 400 feet out at
that's
Keys.
what I'm thinking.
But you still have to go through the process and not be more than a percentage of the percentage of the property, right, Liz?
No, the way this is written, it's just a straight square footage. So it just draws a line of when you need the conditional use permit.
Okay.
So if you're below that 525, which is what it's in code right now, you would not need it, and if you went above that, then you would need it. But that number, can be set to whatever.
Yeah.
But
it has to meet the rest of the criteria, too.
true.
I mean, even if you had something that's 400 square feet, if it red flagged on one of the other criteria, it still would have to come to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm going to run a photography studio and, I'm going to definitely need at least 400 square feet. And it might just be in my carport and, one of my bedrooms or whatever, but yeah, I think I would definitely need more than 400 square feet for...
I think the
studio
other thing to notice on this is that on number 7, on page 69, where it says prohibited home occupation uses, we actually never had this before, but it does specify that things that produce noise, glare, vibration, smoke, or odor beyond the property line are prohibited. So, that would, again, fall into someone who would have to come in and get...
We'd have to go for a conditional use permit at that point.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I like Section 7B, which specifies that you can't have a home occupation permit for retail sales.
I think it's for, as you start to implement, to decide whether these prohibited home occupation uses are things that you want to allow via a conditional use permit, or you don't want to allow via a conditional use permit. Because really the threshold for the conditional use permit is the size. That's where it really kicks in.
then I also like the parts that prohibit people from doing, putting in an automobile repair yard in a residential area. Because you could have a garage and quite a few cars on site and quite a bit of noise. And I mean, not to say that I'm against people doing private enterprise, it's just that there's, I wouldn't necessarily want to be living in a in a residential lot and then have my neighbor on one side being a metal fabricator and my neighbor on the other side doing car repair work. I mean, so I think it's good.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to our,
It's a pretty good balance.
moving on to the next exciting thing.
Oh, this is good. You skipped over it?
Page 71. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, yeah, it's coming. Manufactured home on single-family lot. So, the definition of a manufactured home is changed. They're not called mobile homes anymore. They're called manufactured homes, and the standards for them, construction standards have improved significantly. To the point where we don't really see why we wouldn't allow them in single-family residential if they met certain criteria. And so here we've laid out some basic criteria. Some of them are, aesthetic, and some of them are structural that would allow for these manufactured homes, not mobile homes, right? Not ones that are pre-76, but newly constructed manufactured homes to be placed on single-family residential lots.
And can I just say on behalf of every family every couple who ever tried to start a family in this town, thank you very much. This is going to be huge for people who want to own their own property and maybe put their own starter home on it, or just get a leg up and not rent. This is huge. Up until now, I don't think that you've been able to have a mobile home or a manufactured home in anything other than in a trailer park, correct?
Right.
Thank you.
I have a question concerning tiny homes and this.
We're coming to that.
We're coming to that, okay. Because I see the 1,000 square foot on the floor plan on this, and what came to mind to me was somebody who wanted to put a tiny home on their lot and then build another home on that lot,
Yes.
and then have the tiny home as the accessory dwelling unit. Is there a pathway for that?
I think so.
Okay.
That was a lot of different things.
I know, but that's what came to mind for me, so.
Okay.
It makes sense, because a tiny home would make a great starter home while you're
Yeah.
building your dream home on the lot.
So moving on, page 73, mobile home and manufactured dwelling parks. These are the types of things you'd see in the residential high district. So these are kind of the traditional mobile home park. The one thing that we did do was reduce the minimum size. It had been at, was it 3 acres, I think,
For the size of the park.
for the size of the park. And so we brought that down, but still have a standard where, you can only have so many mobile homes per acre. So,
9.
and then there's a specific thing, as you see down here in D, which is the manufactured dwelling design and small developments. So if you had less than 2 acres, then you start kind of adding some criteria in there that make it look more like a little housing development versus a big, a regular mobile home park.
Now, in something like this, Liz, as far as having a manufactured dwelling or mobile home park, if I owned the park itself, could I own all of the mobile homes so they were rentals, or would I just sublet the space?
I mean, traditionally, it's just you rent the space, but I don't think there's anything prohibiting someone from renting out the actual home.
So I'm going to buy 10 trailers, or
And
10
put them in.
manufactured homes, put them in, and rent them all out.
Yeah, but each one would have its own, it's more of a spacing thing for us,
Yeah,
right?
20 feet
Right.
between, yeah, okay, thank you. I'm going to make my millions.
Yes, I can see that.
But I have a question on G, non-conforming parks, that'd be the existing parks. That's going to be rather controversial, I would assume?
So I hope not, because basically, we're looking at anyone who's already in place is in place, but then as you're moving things out and moving things in, we're going to expect you to conform to the spacing standards. And we're actually starting to implement that already, so.
I think it's a good idea, but I just was...
I think it's a good idea, too.
What did you say?
I said it was a very good idea.
Thank you.
Did you think of it,
Say
Joe?
it again.
I don't know. But it's,
Actually, Joe did all of this.
yeah. But just to lighten up on that one, just that as these trailer parks, Lumber Street, McGill's, as the old trailers escape or get moved, we are enforcing some of the existing spacing, so we'd love to see every trailer at least 20 feet apart from each other, including porches, lean-tos, carports, everything. So the spacing requirements have to come back more into compliance.
Continuing on, page 75, so then standards for when you're just using a mobile home as a dwelling, the prohibition of recreational vehicles to be used as a permanent dwelling, and then also you can't use an RV or a mobile home as a accessory dwelling, so you can't just park an RV in your yard and hook it up and call it an apartment or something. Those aren't made for those aren't made for permanent residential use. And then page 76, tiny house dwellings. These standards are probably closer to what you would consider building code standards. Because we don't have any building code standards for tiny house dwellings, we've adopted these that eventually will make their way into the International Building Code, which is what we follow, but that probably won't be until 2018, right, Joe? Mm-hmm. But the state of Alaska is still at 2009? 2012. So rather than wait the 6 years until Alaska gets to 2018 or however long it takes, we're just going to pull that part of the International Building Code that deals with tiny houses and just adopt that portion of it in our code. So it just mostly deals with minimum ceiling heights and how to deal with lofts and stairways to lofts, because none of those would be able to meet standard code on a regular house. It also defines what a tiny house dwelling is, and that's going to be 400 square feet or less. So you can have an accessory dwelling unit, a standard one under the existing building code, or you could build a tiny house accessory dwelling unit under this section. And then the next page, which is 78, is accessory dwellings. Currently, the code only allows accessory dwellings that are attached. So you could put an apartment inside an existing house where you share a wall. And we've been pretty loose on how we're defining attached, like we've allowed breezeways and other things, but really what we want to get to is allowed detached accessory dwelling. So if you wanted to have a little cottage, behind your house or next to your house, then this allows what? It does have a size limit, and it cannot be any taller than your primary house, so we don't have two giant residential houses on one lot where you already had one main house. So it does set up some standards there, and also with utilities. If you want to share utilities, you have to make sure that you can get power, Public Works okay on that, because not all, utility lines coming in can adequately meet additional fixtures, so you want to make sure they're going to need that approval too, or set up a separate line for that accessory dwelling. Bed and breakfast inns on page 80. We've never had anything in code specifically on bed and breakfasts. And again, this just sets the standard where if you are within these guidelines, then you're okay to go ahead and move forward. But then once you're outside of the guidelines, then you'd be looking at a conditional use permit or a variance of some sort. The requirement that, the fire code requirement, that's actually a state requirement. So if you're not the owner in residence and residing at that location, you do have to have fire marshal review. Or if it's greater than 5 rooms, you have to have fire marshal review, but that's a state requirement, not ours, but we put it in there just for people's information. Page 81, cottage housing. Yeah, at some point, we're gonna hopefully fill that in at some future date. Caretaker dwelling, we set the caretaker dwelling size at 650 square feet for industrial lots. So you can still have a caretaker dwelling on industrial property if there is an established industrial use, but the size maximum on that is going to be 650 square feet. Another thing that we've dealt with, page 82 is temporary dwelling during construction. And this allows for an RV or a trailer of some sort for people to have that while they're building their own house. Again, it just sets out the standards. You're going to need to have already pulled a building permit before we're going to consider it. We're not going to make it a conditional use permit. It's just going to be a set temporary time period. You can have this. Anyway, it just alleviates having to go through the planning commission to get that temporary use established and then set some standards for it. Then we also have a future vacation rental dwelling reserved, which is, if you're renting out your entire house, like through Airbnb or something, that's become a really big issue down south where people do that. And it just starts to cause concerns in a neighborhood when you have lots of vacation dwellings, whole house vacation dwellings. But I don't see it as an issue here, but I figured it's on the list of something to think about in the future. Everybody still with me? Okay, so, all right. Chapter 2.4, overlay zones.
Yes.
So there's two. One is the floodplain management zone, and that's pretty much exactly the way it's written currently in code. And it's pretty much the way every community in Southeast Alaska has theirs written. I think FEMA just handed out, here's the code, and everybody adopted it as such. But then 24040, which is the historic district, which is page 92. This actually creates a historic district overlay on Singley Alley and Hammer Slough. We actually already have in code a few things on a historic district, but this expands the area. And the things we have in code right now primarily are that you have to use wood piling, and then you have to also have, you can only use metal siding or metal on the roof. You can't use metal siding. And now it escapes me what we added, and I forgot to put it in there. Do you remember what it was, Joe?
For roofing?
I think we said that you couldn't, you could only use vinyl on...
For siding?
For siding, yeah, and windows, yeah. But actually have it it's in a different section where it actually lays out what the specifics are of it, but that's in the section we're not looking at today. But I'm trying to remember, we did add one or two things, but they weren't anything, they're in a different section of the. they're in Article 3.
3.2.070, is that it?
No, it's in Article 3. It's actually in a whole different, it's in a development standard.
Okay.
But I think there was two things that were existing. One was that metal roof, roofing only, and the wood piling, and then there was, I think, two things that we added.
It was wood or wood-like material.
That's right, it was wood or wood-like material on the siding, so that it would fit in with everybody else. I thought there was one other thing, I can't remember what it was. I meant to include that in there and I forgot. And obviously the map didn't print either, because I just got a blank, yeah. So there actually was a map that showed. But it's more or less correlates with what's currently zoned Commercial 2 on Hammer Slough, but actually goes all the way up through where the warehouses are on that side. And then comes through around here into Singley Alley. And it's any lot that will front Singley Alley or Birch Street, basically, is what it comes down to. But, so there's some lots that are owned by the same people, but the lot actually doesn't come through to Singley Alley, and those weren't included. So if they want to do something different on the backside of the property and not meet those standards, then that was acceptable. So it didn't really matter unless you were actually touching that. So the only other thing in my speed discussion here was, I left this for last. On page 41, which is the allowed uses. So there's several pages of this, and it's broken up into all the residential uses, and then it goes into public uses, then commercial uses, and then basically industrial uses. So you see each zone, then there's the use, and it tells you, it indicates whether it's not allowed, whether it's permitted, or whether there's some sort of special use standard, and then it references the special use standard. So as someone is considering doing something, they can just find their zone, and then, or their use, find their zone, and then determine pretty quickly whether it's allowed or not allowed or requires a conditional use permit. In some cases, you'll see there's a standard and a conditional use permit required. And where things are highlighted in yellow, that generally indicates it's a change from what's currently in code. And you'll especially see that under commercial zone and employment under GI, which is general industrial, where no is suddenly, all of the residential uses are listed as no, where we always allowed those as conditional uses in the past. I think through these different districts, we'll be able to actually set aside general industrial as areas where we really think you'll have true industrial uses, processing, manufacturing, things that are loud and can be annoying to residential users. And then we'll also have what's called a light industrial, which is kind of a mixed use. So yeah, we can allow some residential in there. We're not going to allow heavy-duty manufacturing, but we can allow things like welding and storage and warehouses and all of that kind of jazz that isn't a huge impact on residential.
Does more of that fall under conditional use permit and special use permit type?
We wouldn't for that. So on light industrial, residential, and some of those kind of light industrial uses would be by right uses.
Yeah, but I was saying if there are some uses that are borderline to being an issue to the neighbors, would those more fall under conditional use permit? I just was curious.
Well, in that case, when you're looking at light industrial, it's really the opposite, right? Because the conditional use used to be the residential, so it's not necessarily that it's going to bother the neighbors because your conditional
Yeah.
use is a house, so that's really, it's kind of
Okay.
the wrong way. But if you're talking about the other way, which is if we're looking at a residential zone and you're trying to bring in some sort of commercial or industrial, then I think if you kind of start going down into commercial uses, it's pretty limited, especially as you see, it's like almost all kind of dashed out where it's not applicable. And there's pretty limited conditional uses or any kind of commercial or industrial activity in residential areas. The one exception would be that Rock Pit is a conditional use in rural residential, which is an existing code. But outside of that, you know, it's pretty strict on allowing commercial and industrial development in residential. But again, this is all subject to hearings and review.
So I have one question regarding commercial that I'm confused about. I guess, okay, what's the zone that you're calling commercial now? Is that also including industrial?
No,
On
so
page 65, I guess I'm misunderstanding this chart.
okay, so 65.
Yeah, or 60, or any of the pages on the zoning regulations is allowed uses. I guess I missed the part that explained what DC means, GC,
Sure.
LI.
Probably because I didn't explain those.
Is there a key to that somewhere?
Yeah, so if you look in the front, on that first section, on page 34, 35, 36, that defines each one of those
Okay.
zones.
Okay, so DC and GC are what's called, what?
Downtown.
C1?
Right, downtown commercial, which is basically C1,
Okay.
but made smaller, so it's pretty compact. It's really downtown.
So what you've done is you've made basically downtown commercial, and everything else is
General
now
commercial.
GC.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then when are you gonna start having, in the maps for the waterfront districts of what, because we've been having to deal with this already, that's what came out of the process with the consultants, right?
Right.
Okay.
And I don't have those listed on the use table yet, because I keep going back and forth on whether waterfront is actually a whole separate list of uses or whether it's really an overlay, which means like you could do all the same things in industrial, but the waterfront just adds that it needs to be related to the water. So really, is it just kind of an additional water on top of what's already there, or is it really a separate district with separate types of uses? And I keep going kind of back and forth on what's the easier way to try and implement that, and I haven't really landed on one side or the other yet on that. So I'm just trying to keep it simple, but each one has its own pros and cons, so.
Okay, so the standards and dwellings in commercial zone, that mainly on page 65, that mainly applies to the downtown commercial zone?
It only applies to the downtown
Okay.
commercial
And
zone.
that's the definition, what you're defining as a downtown commercial zone is the definition of the street parameters there, right?
Right.
Okay.
Well, no, actually, that is a subset of the downtown commercial zone where this particular thing applies. So really, we're just looking at Main Street and Singley Alley area. But the downtown commercial zone is actually a little bit bigger than that. But
Okay.
these standards only apply.
So essentially what you're saying is downtown, you can't turn existing retail space that's downtown into living space?
Right. On the first floor.
On the first floor?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, now I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, now I understand.
And that Main Street, I guess that's another one to bring up, is that Main Street area that's kind of outlined there, in a separate section of the code, it actually has some additional standards which basically mimic the way our downtown looks now. You know, there's an awning, there's storefront windows, there's a door that comes out to Main Street, you know. Those things would be put into the code,
Okay.
just for that street area,
Right.
but not for the entire district.
And the rest of dwellings in the commercial zone, that you can have a dwelling if your property's, what's the new classification, C?
DC, or
DC.
GC?
GC.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I should double check that. Make
Yeah, I was
sure.
just confused when I saw what the DC meant, then it comes clear.
So we'll see these new classifications on maps, and will it be available online? People can just type in their street address, and you can see, like, it'll pop up with what your classification is?
That's the way it's set up now, where we have, if you've ever looked on our online viewer, you can go in there and there's a zoning map.
Okay.
And you can put in your address or your parcel ID or your last name and click on your lot. And in there, it'll say the zoning for that lot. The other thing that comes with this, and you'll see that in the next round of code, but it's trying to eliminate some of the off-street parking requirements for the Main Street businesses. It's, you know, so tight down there that any kind of expansion really is prohibited because you can't meet that off-street parking requirement. So to try and allow people, if they want to expand anyway, if they can, to eliminate that off-street requirement for that area, which I think will be a positive thing. And that'll also extend into the historic district where there's not going to be any off-street parking requirement. The expectation is people will be walking into those areas and not necessarily having to park at a place in that area. So. And then the other thing is just curious on how you feel about starting to have public hearings this fall about this, and how much time you think people, we as the commission, the public, need in terms of public hearings. I was thinking at least 2 public hearings anyway, at minimum, before the planning commission, and then there would be 3 readings before the assembly as well. That would need to go through. So at minimum, that's 5 public comment opportunities and discussions. But I guess I just wanted to get some feedback on whether 2 is enough. Do you want more, less? We're not going to do the maps first off either, just so you know.
I think 2 sounds good. No matter what we do, there's going to be people that are going to get angry because we didn't tell them. We didn't knock on their door.
And how do you propose to conduct these?
The public hearings?
Yes.
Just like we do our normal meetings. It would just be an agenda item.
Okay.
If he chooses to run.
Yeah. Okay.
It would just be an agenda item, and people would, have their opportunity to say what they wanted to say.
So we do this in conjunction with our regular meetings, or in
Yeah,
addition?
that's what I was thinking, yeah. Unless you want to do an additional separate one.
I think it could end up making long meetings.
Yeah, if we're going to do that, why don't we just do the first one like a standalone evening meeting sometime, like in the fall when everybody's theoretically in town? Mm-hmm. And then preferably on a Monday night when the Packers are playing. No. No. I mean, if we're going to do this right, we should, one, get the information out to the public, not in this format, but maybe some of the highlighted changes. A few of the bullet points people could get upset about or support. And then, you know, shouldn't we run it by the assembly to see if this is how they want to do it? Or should we just, or we're empowered to do this on our own?
Yeah,
I'm just,
I'm already going along, I don't know.
Yeah, for us, doesn't it?
yeah.
They have it after you
Yeah.
guys. I mean, I already went and talked to them that we were doing this, so they're aware that this process is happening.
Well, I think we should have at least one big kickoff meeting where we have it in the evening somewhere people can attend and put something in the paper or at least on the radio, letting people know what we're doing. Have some format that goes out that's not like this, that requires people to read, you know.
So one separate meeting just for this?
I would
and then-
say, yeah, just one separate meeting, let's just see what happens. If 5 people show up and we don't have any more comments, if we have 100 people show up, then obviously we'll have to have more meetings, and then just take it by, you know, just let everybody know this is the start of the process and not the end of the process, and just get input from the public on it.
Just have a meeting first before we do any public hearing.
No, either one. Well, we can have a public hearing, we can have a meeting, however we want to structure it.
Well, that's the thing, is I would like to structure it so that it's, the dates are known, and
Yeah.
then the flow is known. So we're like, okay, we're going to do, if we're going to do it that way, well, all right, we're going to have a standalone public hearing on just zoning code revision on such and such date. Following that, we're going to have it up for consideration at a public hearing and action at the next planning commission meeting at this date. Then it's going to be sent to the assembly for first reading on this date. There'll be a public hearing at the assembly on this date, and then the assembly is going to take final action on this date. I mean, that would be,
Yeah.
to be able to publish all of that up front, I think would be really helpful for folks, because then they know at which, you know, all the opportunities they have for comment.
Yeah, that's fine. I just think we need to have a kickoff meeting so people want to know we're doing it. And we have like a list of the highlights of what the changes are. So that if somebody's just scanning the newspaper, they can say, oh yeah, I'm interested in that. I might not be interested in what type of pilings need to be in the historical district, you know. But if you tell people, you know, we're talking about building heights, we're talking about home occupation businesses, we're talking about caretaker cottages, or we're talking about, you know, there's a lot of things in here that are highly controversial.
Yeah.
And some people might be good with 90% of it, but the 10% they have real heartburn with. So we need to, I guess, what I'm trying to say is educate people first what the proposed changes are, and then allow them to have some feedback on that. But for us to do that effectively, we have to be more comfortable with what exactly is in this document, so that if you want us to be moderating the meeting, we can answer the questions.
So do you feel like you guys need more time and more review of this before we do that? Or, I mean, I don't want to like throw you under the bus and just hand you something and then expect you to defend it publicly, you know, without fully
How
understanding
much
it.
more have we got to go through?
There's probably the next most controversial part, which is development standards, which kind of lays out,
When do you foresee being done with all of the?
that's the last
zoning code? That's the
section.
last segment.
Yeah. And then there's
And
definitions.
We probably
but-
are going to want it at least a month after that to go through the thing as a whole and discuss it, and probably run things back and forth with you of things that we see as being issues before we put it out to the public. So,
Okay.
Kind of puts us like November timeframe.
I was thinking more of after the election in October.
Yeah.
Just because if we wait till November, then we're up in the holidays. October, usually there's a lot of people around then. If we get done by then, I mean, at least have the first meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
First
think
public
that's what
meeting
we
in
should probably
October.
start sometime in October would probably be a good timeline, but.
And, you know, after a few days after those new theoretic planning commissioners too.
Yeah, that's a lot to absorb all at once for
Yeah, well, that's a lot, there's a lot in this.
There is a lot, yeah, I
There's a lot
agree.
in here, and there's a lot of things that people are going to have heartburn with that are going to have a say on it.
Yeah.
And it'd be better if we want to be able to go to the assembly and say, this is what we propose, I'm sure they'll go in and tweak certain things, but we don't want them to have to go through the same process that we're doing here, just in the interest of time.
It may spike interest on people running for planning and zoning if we get the word out that
Yeah.
this is on the agenda, that this is going on, and if you want to have a little extra say in what's going on with this, maybe you should run for planning and zoning. Because I'm a little skeptical that we're going to be able to have quorums easily after
Right.
this election.
How many people are running so far?
There's 4 empty seats on planning and zoning. Chris is going to run, but I've already signed up to run for assembly. So,
And so I'm still on here, right? You're theoretically on here, Otis?
no,
Carly?
Tor and Carly.
You're not running again? So,
Which is hard to believe after this exciting presentation, Carly.
why would you want to leave?
You can talk to her after.
Yeah, right.
I have to get back to work.
Okay.
Okay, so what I got is, assuming we have a final package, then you want it a month before we do any public meeting.
Yeah, I think a month gives us time to go through everything
Yeah.
and get back with you and say, these are the things we need to tweak a little bit before we put it out to the public.
Because I'm just understanding this now that you've explained some of this stuff.
Yeah,
And I'll
no,
have to go
it's-
back and reread it to sort of
No,
exactly
it's
what you're
very,
talking
it's
about.
different. It's very different than what we've had in the past, and so it's going to take a little bit of time to understand the mechanics of it and how it works. And then, I mean, implementation's a whole nother thing where I think it'll be a learning experience there too, so.
People are going to have heartburn with large parts of it. I
Yeah, no, I
guarantee.
agree. I mean, I think there's good and there's
Yeah.
things that people are going to be concerned about. I mean, across the board, even some people are going to love some things and other people are going to think those are really difficult things too. So we'll see. Personally, I think a lot of it is just that it's sort of a giant leap forward in our zoning code, and there might have been easier if we had had some iterative steps in the last
There's a lot-
25 years, maybe?
There's a
25
lot of
years?
folks
Yeah,
in this town that
30
are
years,
afraid
I
of
think it is,
change.
yeah. But, it is a much more modern code, and the way it's structured is much more modern than what we had before, so.
And we have yes, we have to keep up.
It's change.
Petersburg has to keep up.
And in some cases, we're actually very cutting edge, especially on our
Oh, don't say that.
our tiny house. We're going to be like very progressive on tiny house.
Something happened with the recording equipment.
We would be very progressive in Alaska for it.
So,
Well, if we're done with the zoning code for this meeting, scheduling for November meeting,
what happened in September?
well,
We already have September set, but it's November. Where Joe and I are both going to be gone for the meeting date. So Karen refused to be here by herself.
I'm leaving the 15th of November.
We have Thanksgiving in there.
Yeah.
Right. So could we do it earlier in November?
So our October meeting is the 17th, I believe. So let's see, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
yeah, I've got on the schedules the 17th.
I'm going to be at Southeast Conference on the meeting in September on the 19th. That's still when we're meeting.
Yeah,
I can call in.
okay. No, I'm going to be here.
I should be able to
I'll
make
be in
it.
town for September.
And are we going to do that at,
Correct?
pardon?
Noon?
4:30.
4:30,
4:30?
right?
Oh, yes, for September.
Yeah.
So do we have 4 for September at least?
I'll be here.
I will be calling in,
That doesn't establish a forum.
yeah.
I don't know.
You don't know, okay, so we don't know for September, okay?
Tor should be around, there's not much fishing going on.
Yeah, I would think Tor might be back, yeah.
Who else is there?
Yancy.
Yancy.
And then the 17th of October. Yes.
Yeah, I'm here.
I don't have anything on the schedule at that time, so I should be
Okay.
here.
That's after the election, so we'll see if we have, yeah, okay. And then we get to, Dave, you leave the 15th. I get back the 15th from Anchorage. 1, 2. I guess we could do it like the 9th or the 10th? That's really early, but the 10th is Veterans Day.
You said go for my mail merges.
Yeah. We would like be kind of doing almost 2 simultaneously. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
I need to leave in a second to go pick somebody up from the jet.
No. Oh,
I
okay.
gotta pick somebody up from the jet.
Oh, I thought you meant in November. Sorry.
No. So, kinda gotta wrap this up.
I think I'm going to be gone the 13th and the 14th and then that whole next week, so. And Joe, you don't know for sure yet, right?
More than likely at the same time,
That same time? Okay.
so if I'm not the 7th.
So the 7th, 8th, that week of the 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Yeah, I'm here.
The 10th is Veterans Day, so we probably wouldn't do that. So I'd say tentatively the 9th? That's kind of really
Sure.
quick, but, okay.
Does that work? Are you still around?
I should be.
Okay. Well, it might not matter if we don't get other people.
Yeah. We might have to have everybody present before we can have a meeting.
Yeah, and
There's
there's only 2 of you.
After
the 3 of
the
you.
election, they have to have time to get sworn in and stuff too before the meeting.
Yeah.
Something to keep in mind.
That would be October 17th.
So a meeting right after.
So the 17th of October, the 19th of September, and the 9th of November?
17th of October, what do we got for
I have 19th
19th
of September,
September,
17 October,
17 October,
and
and what are we doing for the,
9th of
The 9th.
November.
9th of November.
okay.
And then I'm gone till Christmas Day in December.
Okay. Okay. See if that works.
That'll work.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.